Please feel free to just raise your hand if you would like to come to the stage and be an interactive part of tonight's discussion. We are on day 2 of the 4-day webinar series, the Power of You Emergence webinar series. I'd like to give everybody about 5 minutes to get in. We are running this on Zoom as well as on Clubhouse. I'd like to remind everybody that it is a recorded event. So if you would like to not have your face shown on Zoom, just simply turn your cameras off. But please feel free to raise your hand. Ping anybody into the room who you feel will benefit from the discussion that we are having tonight. Again, this is day 2 of the Power of You Emergence series. And I'm very happy to have you all. I'm giving everybody about 2 more minutes to join the room. If there is someone you would like to join with you, please feel free to ping them into the room so we can get started. Tonight's topic is the curse cannot hold you. So we're going to give everybody a couple more minutes and then we're going to get started. We will finish up right at the 30-minute mark, so we will not be on here long at all. For those on Zoom, I want to remind everyone this is a recorded event. So if you do not want your face shown, just make sure you do turn your cameras off and I will ensure that you are not being shown. About 1 more minute, we'll go ahead and get started. Hope everyone is having an amazing evening so far and ready to dive right on in. All right, we are going to get started here. Turn this music off. Again, this is going on both Zoom and on Clubhouse. So if there's anyone who is interested in being called up to the stage, just raise your hand and I will make sure that you are part of the interactive piece of tonight. So welcome to day 2 of the Power of You Emergence webinar series. I am your moderator and host, Coach K. I am a sexuality coach, a certified doula, as well as a business coach. So the reason why I opened up each one of those businesses is because I wanted to be a resource that I needed growing up. I wanted to ensure that I was not going to leave any person left behind that needed any kind of guidance, and thus I am here. So the purpose of this webinar series is to encourage, support, and to breathe purpose into each and every one of you. So I named this the Power of You, to remind us of the power that we truly possess within. So most times, as I mentioned on yesterday, when we're looking for guidance and we're looking for strength, we often look externally. And that means that we completely forget about the power that we possess inside. So just a quick recap on yesterday's, which was the foundational truth. That was day 1. Yesterday, we spoke about the foundational truth. What we talked about was recognizing, acknowledging, and accepting our foundation. Remembering that acceptance does not mean condoning. So just because a certain part of our foundation is not the best or has some character flaws, it does not mean that we condone it. But we have to recognize, acknowledge, and accept it in order for us to grow. We also talked about being composed of genetics, as well as learned behaviors, both consciously and unconsciously learned. So let's think about this. As children, we often mimic what we see. So that becomes a habit, and then it becomes eventually a way of life. So if you think about a child who begins to cook early, it's probably because they were in the kitchen with mom or dad, watching them cook. Who knows? Maybe they want to grow up to be a chef. We don't know, but we know that children often mimic our behaviors. So what do you think of when you hear the word curse? So usually people think of someone casting a spell or, a bad word, you're cursing somebody out. So in this instance, I'm going to be speaking about the generational curse. This can be any negative cycle of family traps themselves into, such as alcoholism, abuse, teen pregnancies. There's a lot of generational traps that families tend to fall into, and that's what we're talking about tonight. So I'm going to ask you a question. So can you think of a generational curse or habit that you witnessed and are currently in cycle with? May have to take a little bit of time to think about that, but I really want you to think back. Can you think of something that you know that you do or a habit that you've seen and you kind of like, oh, you know what? I kind of do that. So the question was, can you think of a generational curse or habit that you witnessed and are currently in cycle with? Now, do you ever ask yourself why? Or do you accept it? Or do you totally ignore that it's even a generational curse at all? Good question, right? So yesterday you heard a little bit of a story about my dad and how foundationally I was something like him, but I didn't know him. So today I'm going to give you a short story about my mom. So my mom, she had me and my sister. She was in her 20s. Like you learned on yesterday, my father, when I was 6 months old, he shot himself, so he was gone. So my mother was a single parent raising two girls in her 20s. We never really had a stable home. We moved around a lot. We always had a roof over our head. But I watched my mom really work extremely hard to take care of us. A lot of the time she was stressed. She had friends that came around to help us. So if we needed stuff, she would call a friend who would, give her money to make sure that we had. And I think it was in those moments that I recognized that that's not something that I would be comfortable with. It kind of made me uncomfortable. But I watched my sister, who is 2 years older than me, and she was just fine. She just flowed through life like everything was okay. And so at a young age, I made the choice to not seek approval from my family. Yes, I made that choice. And I love her with all of me. I love everyone in my family, honestly, with all of me. I just broke free from the approval process. So what am I talking about when I say the approval process? If we truly think about it, subconsciously, we seek approval from our family. And that is a lot of times how we end up in these curses, sort of say. But remember, the curse cannot hold you. So a quick example, a toddler continues behaviors when we show them approval. So, when they first take that first step and we're like, oh yeah, that is so awesome. Guess what? They're going to keep getting up and trying their best to walk and take those steps because we just breathe energy and positivity into them for that action. Thus, they want to continue that action because we gave our approval. Why? Because they naturally desire to please. That is what children do. Now, as we grow up, the feelings of being approved grows. So we want bigger approval. So we continue to do things. So during this process, we stop placing more on our self-approval, and thus we fall into the cycle because we continue to want the approval externally. And that's how we end up in the generational curse or generational cycles. And I hope this is making sense to you guys. So again, to reference on yesterday, we have to recognize, we have to acknowledge, and we have to accept that there are generational curses and you may be a part of it. Once this happens, we can truly alter our steps. But until we can recognize, acknowledge, because those are two separate things, and accept that we may be in a generational cycle, then we can never alter our steps. And again, for everyone that is welcome, has joined us from Clubhouse, if you would like to be an interactive part of the conversation, absolutely raise your hand and come on in. Today is day 2 of the 4-day webinar series, the Power of You Emergence series. And today we are talking about the curse cannot hold you. We just did a recap of yesterday, and we are talking about the approval process that many of us seek as children. And as we grow, our essence for approval grows, and thus we fall into generational cycles, aka curses. So a lot of times we need to talk about our quote unquote our flaws to be okay with them in order to work on them. What we may think is a character flaw may simply be a small behavioral adjustment that needs to happen. Every curse, sort of say, or every cycle is not meant to be negative. If we know that we have a family history of alcoholism, does that mean that you have to say, you know what, I'm never drinking? No, that just means that we need to recognize, acknowledge, and accept that we have alcoholism in our family, while making sure that we do not fall into that cycle of wanting to have approval from our family. So we don't overdrink, but we can drink in moderation. I know many people who have alcoholism in their family choose to completely live a dry life. They do not want to pick up a drink for fear that they fall into that. That is someone who has fallen away from having more self-approval than they do seeking it externally. And so they want to make their family happy. And so they engage in the behavior, which can lead them into what? The generational curse or generational cycle. So just like on yesterday, we're going to work on an activity. The activity for today, I want you to write yourself a letter. And in that letter, include the cycle that you're continuing. I want you to write out a plan to alter your steps. And then I want you to write an apology to yourself. I want you to put that in an envelope with whatever date that you wrote it. I want that date on the front of the envelope, and then the words, "The curse cannot hold me." So I'm going to repeat that activity for everyone that's on Zoom and for anyone who comes in on Clubhouse, because again, this is a recorded event on both Zoom and Clubhouse. So if you do not want your face shown on Zoom, just make sure your camera's off. So our first activity for today's topic, I want you to write yourself a letter, and included in that letter, I want you to recognize, acknowledge, and accept the cycle that you're continuing. I want you to write out a plan to alter your steps. So we're trying to break that cycle. In that, I want you to write an apology to yourself. What that apology is giving yourself permission to forgive, giving yourself permission to forgive. So write that apology to yourself. I want you to put it in the envelope. On the front of the envelope, I want you to write the date that you wrote the letter. And then I want you to write on the front, "The curse cannot hold me." And keeping with that plan, when you feel like you've made an alteration of your steps, you can go back to that letter, you can read it, and then you can recognize where you were and where you are today. Welcome again to everyone that just joined on Clubhouse. If you would like to be an interactive piece of tonight, feel free to raise your hand and come on into the conversation. Tonight, we are talking about day 2 of the 4-day webinar series, the Power of You Emergence series. We are talking about the curse cannot hold you. So we are talking about generational curses, which is a continuation from yesterday. So activity 2, I want you to get a dry erase marker and on a mirror that you look at on a regular basis. So I would not recommend the bathroom because the humidity from the shower may wipe it away, but maybe in a bedroom or in another room like an office. So a dry erase board, I want you to write in big letters, "I am," put a line down, and right beside it, I want you to write, "I am not." And so under the I am, I want you to truly write everything that you are. I am powerful. I am great. I am a mother. I am a writer. So write all the things that you are, everything that you are. On the other side, I want you to write the things that I am not. So if you know, again, just using the example of alcoholism, if you know that there's alcoholism in the family, you may drink a little bit, but you haven't gone to the point of alcoholism. I am not an alcoholic. I am not a victim. I am not da da da. So you're going to write out those things and leave it up on your dry erase board. I want you to look at that dry erase board every day. Why? Because some of those things may change on a regular basis. That's going to show your growth on a regular basis. So just a quick recap from tonight. We are on day 2 of the Power of You Emergence webinar series. We are talking about the curse cannot hold you. Tonight, we talk about generational curses and how we have to take it upon ourselves to not seek external approvals, which help us to fall into those gaps of generational curses so that we can alter our steps and break those curses. Why? Because the curse cannot hold you. Only you can hold you. How do we start to seek internal approval? Every day using activity 2, we are going to look at the things that you are and the things that you are not. It is perfectly okay to not continue a tradition that is not conducive to your health, mental, physical, or spiritual, in order to have approval by the majority of people around you. It is important for you to seek approval of yourself. If you are doing or engaging in traditional activities that make you feel awkward, that make you anxious, then it is time for you to say, you know what? I step back from this. This is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to do. People may be upset with you for a little while, but I can assure you the happiness that you'll have for yourself will truly outweigh the unhappiness for that little bit of time that someone else may have for you. Thank everyone that joined in on Zoom and on Clubhouse for an amazing time and an amazing discussion. Again, my name is Konya Ford. You can simply call me Coach K. I am a certified clinical sexologist, master sexologist, doula, and business coach. I created this webinar series to remind us of the powers that we have within. I am hitting on the 4 major key points of areas in our life that hold us back from the true growth that we desire, we need, and that we deserve. Tomorrow, we will be hitting on day 3 of the webinar series, and we will be talking about bent, not broken. As you see, every day will tie into the previous day. As I did on yesterday, I am going to give a special offer to everyone. If you would like to take this 4-day webinar series a step further and enroll into the Own Your Ish Sis bootcamp, you can enroll today with 30% off by going to ownyourishsis.com using the code EMERGE30, and it will take 30% off. If these 4 days can show you a transformation, I can assure you that the 5 weeks that the boot camp will give you will completely change your life. Again, this is a recorded event on Zoom as well as Clubhouse. So if you would like to join in, you can always raise your hand and welcome in from Clubhouse the discussion. We are wrapping things up here. I appreciate you all for joining in, and I will see you on tomorrow. All right. Again, thank you guys so much for joining me for day 2 of the 4-day webinar. I truly hope that you got a lot out of today's discussion. I hope that we built on what we talked about on yesterday, and you will probably be catching this replay. So remember, if you are catching this tonight, which I will upload a small version of this, you can go to the ownyourishsis.com and roll into the boot camp, and you can get that 30% off tonight only. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out, and I will see you guys tomorrow.